Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I am Ace and I have a video guide here for you, or a video walkthrough on how to get the right sensitivity settings within Team Fortress 2. And there is actual video footage on how to do so within this video, so don't worry. The wolf will not constantly look at you, just most of the time. And it's usually with instructions I give that it will actually show you footage. And before I actually give you the instructions, I would like to point out two things. That sensitivity settings are actually quite personal in the sense that they have to do with personal preference, of course, as well as your own personal equipment, like your mouse and your mouse mat, which is very important to have one. The bigger the better, in fact. As well as the desk that you sit behind, because that pretty much determines if you have a elbow pivot or a wrist pivot. So asking other people for their settings is actually quite a bad thing to do because they will never have the right settings for you, and this guide will help you to find your own right settings. And once you have done it and you are in a position to, to actually start training with it when you are comfy and, secure enough in knowledge that you have good settings, you can start training and build up your muscle memory, because the first time that you will play after changing all the settings around, you will probably feel awkward and you are probably worse off than you were before. But it's because your muscle memory is adjusted to your different settings, of course, and it just takes a little bit of time to, get adjusted to it. But once you get past that, you will quickly see yourself improving like I did, which is quite amazing to see. At least that's what I found when I was doing it. But just keep that in mind that it takes a while, to adjust your muscle memory to your new settings. And if you keep changing it, you're just making it harder on yourself. So once you get those good settings, just keep training and don't change anything at all, because it takes quite a time to get flawless muscle memory. That said, let's dive right into the first few steps that you have to follow to get the right sensitivity settings. Well, first of all, we have to disable all the settings that might interfere with the interpretation of your mouse movement to your actual computer. And these have to do with like acceleration and smoothing and such. So the first thing that you want to do is go into your configuration screen of Windows itself and go to the hardware, of course. And then you follow that up by going to the mouse settings for obvious reasons, and then going to pointer options, which allows you to disable a function called enhanced pointer precision. If it's already disabled, then you're good to go. If it's not, make sure to disable it. And for now, you are done right here. We will come back later to this, but for now, we are done. The next step has to do with launch codes. What you want to do first is look below this video in the description for the launch codes that I want you to copy. There are 3 launch codes, and what they basically do is prevent Team Fortress 2 to apply mouse smoothing or mouse acceleration. So after you copied those codes, you go to your Steam library, right-click Team Fortress 2, and go to Properties, and then the following screen should appear on, well, your screen itself, of course. And then the following thing that you then do is, of course, click on Launch Options, and then you just add them there. And like I said, they pretty much prevent the game for adding those options to your mouse movement. And the no vid that you can see, that's basically a little gimmick. It has nothing to do with the mouse itself, but it removes the video when you start up Team Fortress 2. But it has nothing to do further with the mouse options. If you want to add it, it's your choice, but just make sure that those 3 that I've added in the description are added to the Team Fortress 2 launch codes. And then there's only one step left, which is DPI, and basically making sure that all the settings of your mouse are correctly if you have a gaming mouse. Because if you have a gaming mouse, they usually come with software that allows you to change things like DPI and stuff that is related to that. So what you want to do is you want to open that software if you have it, otherwise you can skip the step. I'm using the Logitech gaming mouse G700. So I open it and I go to the DPI settings, and I make sure that my DPI is set to 800. 800 is the DPI that's recommended for most general gaming purposes, especially for games like this. You don't see a lot of people go higher. The highest I've seen is 2000, but it's in games like StarCraft. And I will come back after this to give you guys a little bit more explanation to how DPI works. And if you have any other options within your software, like acceleration or smoothing, just make sure that they are turned off or put at 0. And if you have mouse polling, make sure it's 500 or 1000, but don't go any lower. And make sure to apply all the settings and you should be good. Now, like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about DPI as well, especially if you are going to buy a mouse, because DPI on itself, if you are going to buy a gaming mouse, you see all these high DPI numbers like 4K, 8K. I believe these days you can even have 10K DPI mouses if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. And it's more of a gimmick really, because you actually never use it, because if you there's a little bit of math behind it, but the gist of it is basically, for example, that if you have a mouse and you use your 10K DPI, right? Which basically means that if you use your Windows multiplier, your Windows sensitivity multiplier, which is 1 usually, if you max it out, you cannot control your mouse. You can't do it. It's too sensitive. So you put your sensitivity down, assuming that you still want to use your 10K DPI, of course. Which basically means you lower the multiplier to, let's say, 0.25. If you multiply the 10K with 0.25, you only have 2.5K left. Which basically means you have paid too much money because your computer still thinks you only have a mouse of 2.5K DPI. Which is why it's more of a gimmick. And if you look at games like StarCraft, which usually, if you play competitive StarCraft, you see that most users go above 1000 DPI, perhaps above 2000, but they never cross the 2500 limit, I believe. I've never seen actually anyone do that successfully. And for most gaming purposes, especially for games like Team Fortress 2, with 800 you are pretty much good to go. So if you are going to buy a mouse, make sure that you buy it on the way it lays below your hand, or the buttons, and making sure it lasts long. And I do recommend Logitech, of course, because Logitech are just awesome mouses. I still have like mouses that still work from years back, while my Razer Naga that I had for about 2 years is pretty much dead, even though I tried fixing it multiple times by myself. But those are details that have nothing to do with this. And before I digress, we should finally go into, figuring out the right sensitivity for you. There are a few things that you want to do, and the first thing that we're going to do is 2 little techniques, which are pretty much the same techniques, but a little bit split up, to find out what the most optimal sensitivity setting is, or at least the lowest sensitivity setting for your mouse mat. And this is why I recommend getting a really nice and big one, because it allows you to have a lower sensitivity, which basically should mean that you have better aim if you do it right. So what you want to do is find a server, or start a server yourself. Like I started a server myself, which is TR Walkway, or you can start one yourself. It's like Item Test, or just somewhere where you can position your class in front of an object or in front of a marker, and just stand in front of it. And what you want to do is make a turn of 180 degrees while you have your mouse in the middle, and slide it to the right. And basically, if you slide it to the right, to the side of your mouse mat, it should equal 180 degrees. Which basically brings us to the next technique, which is basically the same thing, but then making a 360. You put your mouse on one side of the mouse mat and slide it all the way to the other side, which should be the equivalent of a 360. But make sure that on both sides you have a little bit of space left, so you can slide a little bit further. For example, if in game, if you happen to slide a little bit over it, that you don't slide off your mouse mat. Something to consider. Once you have done that, you can actually go and find out what the actual proper settings for you personally are. And this is usually where you are going to have a little bit of an issue, because your muscle memory is also used to aiming a little bit differently. So you might want to spend a little time on this, because when you get it right, you don't have to change anything ever again unless you actually switch equipment out. So once again, you go to your little wall, make sure you have a little target that you can aim at, and you put your mouse in the middle. Make sure that you are a reasonable distance away from it. You turn around 180 degrees, you put your mouse in the middle, and the thing that you want to do is you slide to the left or to the right relatively quickly and try to aim as precisely as possible. And you keep doing this. Make sure that you turn around to the other side as well, just to make sure that you have both sides covered basically. And if you can properly hit the target constantly, you pretty much are good to go. If you think you can do it faster, you can up your sensitivity a little bit. If you are going too fast or are unable to hit it, if you are going to move a little bit faster with your mouse, you might want to tone your sensitivity a little bit down to make it easier to hit targets. And you pretty much just do this until you have a setting that's good for you. And from there on, you can only really start practicing in MGE, which I, by the way, really recommend doing. Or otherwise just on other servers, as long as you don't forget to play the objective as well. Just for the sake of the other team, of course, or your own team actually. And that pretty much solves it. I hope this helps you guys. It helped me when I was trying to sort out my own issues. And if you liked this video, make sure to subscribe if you haven't. There should be an annotation somewhere for you to do so. I have a Steam group if you want to play with me or against me even. Link is below as well. And if you have any questions or any requests even, which is probably a better thing, make sure to hit me up on my Facebook. Link is also below. Wolves Go Rar, really easy to find. And I also keep people updated on there as well. And this is pretty much it. I wish you the best of luck with your sensitivity, guys. Like I said, any questions on my Facebook, and otherwise there are enough people around here. And I hope it all works out. I can only wish you the best of luck. See ya.